years and years.
Hey, let's
I could go into, lots of details about how I met Ciaglia and how many years we were working together. But I'll just say I got a bit choked up on my way here because the GPS took me right by his house, and pretty much our regular route of going for a visit and then going to Lenny's for lunch, generally with John Benoit, and we had a lot of fun doing that, and we did that right up until June this year on a pretty regular basis. So I'm happy that everybody came. We're looking forward to presenting the music that he arranged the best that we can, some of his compositions as well, and it's an honor. It was the honor of a lifetime to be able to work with Ciaglia and to get to know him and to be able to play the music that he left for all of us. But what I want to remember is while he was alive, it was such a privilege and a gift to be receiving the emails with all of the music that he gave us. Every email was a surprise. I recall Skip Healy telling me once in the 90s when John gave me a packet of music, be prepared, there's lots more where that came from. And boy, was he right. There's a lot of music coming on the regular from Ciaglia. And I feel the best that I can do to honor his memory is to make sure his music gets played. So that's what we're here to do today. So thank you, MCV, for co-hosting this with us, and now I'll give it to Lacey.
Hi there, good afternoon. My name is Larissa Saskin. You guys know me as Lacey. I'm a member of MCV, obviously. I got to meet Ciaglia a little bit later than most everyone here. It was my first Deep River in 2007, and I was very excited. I'm sitting at the Casbah, which is extremely weird to me because I'm a classically trained musician, and I was like, I heard John Ciaglia is going to be here. And everyone's like, yeah. And I was like, that's really cool. I really want to meet him. And they're like, yeah. And then this quiet hippie in the corner was like, man, I heard that guy's a jerk. It was John Ciaglia. So that was my introduction to him. And I was really lucky to get to know him and spend a lot of time with him. In 2020, he wrote music for people he didn't want to write music for because I bullied him into it. I would like you to write for children, and he's like, I don't do that. I'm like, could you try though? And then he's like, I don't think I want to. And I'm like, but I think you can't do it. And he's like, really? We had a wonderful relationship, and he was such a sweetheart. I was so lucky to get to know him. And at the end of his life, he asked that his life's work be presented and organized and open to the public for free in perpetuity. And that's something that he challenged me to do, and I am working on that. It's extensive. But if you're looking for something in particular, once I get things slightly in a row, I would be happy to do that. MCV will host the website as long as we can, or forever, I'm hoping. And we will always be able to listen and share and perform his music, and we want to do that with anyone who is interested. Thank you so much for coming to honor such a quiet and sweet hermit that he was. Thank you, everybody, for being here today.
And now John Benoit will come up and say some words. John.
Did you call me?
Yes.
Yes.
Pay attention now.
I apologize if it sounds like I'm reading, because I am. I'm just at the age where I can't remember anything anymore, so.
Yeah, right.
Good afternoon, and I'm really, really happy to see all who showed up today to this, to celebrate John's life and his music. I don't know about you, but so many of John's songs and arrangements provide the soundtrack for some of my favorite memories in life. John and I were not originally in the same orbit, but we became aware of each other in 1974 me primarily through some of his arrangements and his habit of whipping out his Fife wherever he was on the muster field and playing some Bruce and Emmett tune. Meanwhile, I guess John had begun to hear about this up-and-comer, obsessive-compulsive up-and-comer from the old guard, and thought I might be worth checking out. In the summer of '75, we started playing through charts whenever we were at the same muster or event, and also discussed at length different technique in our approach to both the instrument and the music. It should come as no surprise to you that we both favored a classical approach. John even joined us under the F Troop banner that summer. Just a reminder, F Troop at that time was basically an unofficial old guard unit. But that summer, we competed as F Troop at the CF and DA meet, DA meet. Our stand piece included John's rather unorthodox arrangement of Devil's Flute. We didn't win, nor should we have, believe me. But that was the first of years and years of performances to come. I think the connection between John and I was truly cemented, however, when that summer we played his arrangement of Downshire. Now it's a trio, but we were just two, so we played the outside voices. But something about that, let me tell you, the music we produced was transcendent, and I can still hear it today in my memories. I truly can. That's when we agreed that we should get together to play after my planned ETS from the old guard that following September. Immediately following my discharge, while on my way home to Massachusetts, we got together at his house here in Branford for 4 intense days of playing, listening to and discussing various composers and current musicians, and maybe a little imbibing of both legal and some illegal substances, but whatever. With the addition of Skip Healy and Craig Stopka, we became a quartet, often performing under the name American Fife Ensemble. We even recorded for CBS under that name. And let me tell you, what a great ensemble it was. Can you think of it? Just think about it. I was 21. John was 3 years and 6 days older than I. Skip was then just a senior in high school, and Craig was just slightly older than all of us. It was serendipitous that we all ended up in the same place. And I'll tell you, both Skip and I were truly inspired and went on to join the Mariners, where we all continued to flourish musically. Through all of this, I feel we were fortunate to be at ground zero as John found and strengthened his voice with each new arrangement. When his arrangements are eventually cataloged and made available from, I guess, MCV, you and future generations will be able to track the development and maturing of his voice over time. But I was there, and I'm grateful for it. Skip later went on to discover his talent and passion for the traditional Irish flute. John and I formed Fife in the Fast Lane and started performing as a duet, both within the context of Mariner shows, but mainly on our own. Let me tell you, some of my most sublime, sacred, and spiritual moments came when John and I were perfectly in sync and allowed the music to take hold of us. We each had our strengths, and our arrangements played to those strengths. Our capabilities complemented each other, and our primary focus would be on how our voices blended together. We were fortunate when Jason Malley joined us for a period of time, and we were able to expand beyond two voices, still focusing on the interplay of our lines within the context of the arrangement. I do have to say, however, that I do think John would deliberately mess with me and later on in our relationship. Little by little, I noticed my voice becoming harder and harder, especially when we expanded Fife in the Fast Lane to a quartet with the addition of Sarah McCunniff and Jane Law. There were a few times he'd lay out a chart, and I could barely get through it, let alone make it sound musical. I guarantee, though, that the next time we got together, I could play the shit out of that chart. But you see, that was the thing. We pushed each other. We pushed each other to be better, right from the beginning, neither of us wanting to be the weak link in our musical arrangements. And I can truly say that he made me a better musician in all aspects of what I've accomplished in my career. Well, life happens, and for a number of reasons, we ended up going our separate ways. As age crept up on us, we each experienced our own difficulty performing to our own standards, in time independently leading us to our full retirement from performing. Now when we got together, we'd listen to and discuss the arrangements he was working on at the time, and reflect on who in the next generations we thought was poised to continue moving the needle forward. The good news is we both feel that the future is in good, strong, capable hands. Several young players are building on what we and others have done, and the future of fifing, the future of writing and arranging for the fife, has honestly never looked better. When John got sick with that disease that eventually took him from us, there were so many members of our community who rallied to his support. What a strong testament that so many wanted to give back to the man who gave us so much. That speaks to a life well lived. I don't know if he expressed it overtly to you, but just know that John was humbled and deeply grateful for the love that you all showed him, especially at the last fife and drum events that he was able to attend. Thank you. God bless.
Thanks so much, John. Now, Skip Healy couldn't be with us today, but he recorded a video, so we're going to put it up, and feel free to watch it. So, thanks, everybody.
Hi everybody, I'm very, very sorry I can't be there in person today. I'd like to thank the organizers very, very much for leaving a little space open for me to have at least a video presence there today. I'd also like to thank very much the guy you cannot see right now, my friend Stefan Graf, who's on the other side of the camera. Stefan and I are going to be working on a podcast project together, and I asked him if he could help me out today. He's graciously come a very long way to help me with this project today, so thanks so much. How much of you? Up until, I should say, today is Wednesday that we're recording this, because tomorrow I have to go into the hospital for a continuation of a surgery. A few days ago it came up that I had to have an emergency procedure done. I had my ticket bought, business class upgrade, all set, all fired up, really excited to come over and be there today to celebrate John's life, but events got in the way. Let me tell you a little bit of a story. I'm the youngest of 5 kids. My oldest sister was named Sarah, and she loved music, and her favorite musician, other than me of course, was a man called R. Carlos Nakati. Some of you may have heard of him. He's the most famous player of Native American flute music. He's, in fact, the man who brought Native American flute music back from the grave, basically. And a couple of days before my sister died, I went to visit her, and she said, you know, my greatest wish is for you and R.C. Nakai to meet. sometime. And I said, well, Sarah, you know, he's in this universe, I'm in that universe. You know, I hope that happens to you, but you never know. She said, you never know what the spirits will do. And she passed away 2 days later. 2 days after that, I got an email from R.C. Mackay inviting me to come be the first non-Native American flute player at his Native American Flute Festival in Eau Claire, Wisconsin. So, a few days ago, well, about 8 months ago, I had a surgery on this hand. I've had about 5 hand surgeries in the last 14 months or so. And I had an implant put into this hand, and everything went great for about 8 months. Then last week, I noticed a little bump developing over the surgical area. And the next day I woke up, and there was about a ½ inch high peak there. I noticed it doesn't look good, but I'm going to go to Charlie's Day. I'm going to be there today with all you guys. That night, I went to bed, went to sleep, and in the middle of the night, I heard, "Hey, Pappy, wake up! Up!" in Charlie's voice. He and I always used to call each other Pappy. So I thought, I woke up. And sure enough, it was Charlie from the old days with the rose-colored glasses and the whole thing. And he said, "Look, I know you want to come, but you know, you got to get your hand checked out. What are you even thinking about? You got a family, you got a beautiful kid, you know. Find out what's wrong. I'm already dead. Find out what's going on with your hand." So the next morning, I took the picture. The bump was now almost 1 inch high. And I took a picture of it, sent it to my surgeon. She said, "Get on the next train. Come here to the Schultes Clinic in Zurich. It's one of the premier facilities in the world for these kinds of operations." So I'm very lucky to even get in there. Lord knows I couldn't afford it. But I went in, had an examination. From her to the department head, they had no idea what was going on in my hand. They said, "The one thing we do know is you're going into surgery right now." So this was 4 or 5 days ago. So they found this huge mass inside my hand. They still don't know what it is. But what had happened is this little device is in 3 parts, and the little kind of universal joint in the middle somehow started to come apart. Only the second time this has happened, apparently, in 4 years these procedures have been being done, so lucky me. But the chief surgeon was very funny. He's behind the curtain and he says, "Hello, Mr. Healy, this is the doctor." I said, "Yeah." He says, "This is quite a thing you have going in your hand. I've never seen anything like this in all my years as a surgeon. Can you please tell me what planet you come from? Because the human body is not supposed to do this stuff." So he told me if I had gotten on the plane to come over, it most likely would have ruptured and gone, and then sepsis would have sent in, and it could have gotten very, very, very bad. So thanks, John, for saying not to come. Now, obviously I'm not there, so I imagine what the event is like with Mariners and MCV and all the groups that are performing. We're enjoying all of John's wonderful arrangements, his wonderful original tunes. I know I was supposed to play Mishnah Orion today with Fife Trio and Jim Clark, my favorite Charlie tune. And I actually knew Mishnah, we'll get into that later. But I want to talk a little bit about the Ciaglia that I knew. For about 13, 14 years, John and I traveled around a lot. We did a lot of street busking. Okay, we played 3 or 4 times a week. We'd go down to New York City. We played by the Plaza Hotel, Central Park South, down by the library. All kinds of interesting things happened there. Starting in 1976, when I was working at Disney World, we used to meet in New Orleans, and we'd play in Jackson Square during the day, and at night we'd go down onto Bourbon Street and play all night in Bourbon Street. So we slept probably about 3 hours a day. During those days, you could always stop at a truck stop and go in and buy these ultra caffeine pills that were like, 20,000 milligrams of caffeine in every pill. So we used to just eat those things the whole time we were in New Orleans. We had such great times when we were in New Orleans. One of the greatest times when we were busking there was the police union. Were renegotiating a contract, and so they threatened to go on strike during Mardi Gras. They thought that would shut down the Gras. And you're not going to shut down Mardi Gras. So the police union went out on strike. They called in the National Guard. So the National Guard was in the streets in New Orleans with rifles, full combat packs, the whole deal. The first day they were out, everybody was kind of like feeling it out. The next day, you could see some open shirt collars. The third day, you could see some flowers in rifle barrels. If you were, people would, a lot of times they'd come by, they'd throw a joint in our, Charlie had the beard and I had the hair, so people would throw joints and exotica into our hat sometimes. So if you were standing there smoking a little something, one of these National Guard guys would come by and take it away from you, and they'd put it out on their rifle and they would drop it at your feet and say, I don't want to see you pick that up. And they'd walk away and you'd pick it up and go right back to whatever you were doing. We had such fun on the road, but I know the events that John really enjoyed the most was the years we played in Charleston, South Carolina at the Piccolo Spoleto Festival. That was really John's wheelhouse because it was a classical music festival. It wasn't an Irish music or Celtic music festival or a drum corps muster. It was all classical music. Biggest names in the world had it. So how we found out about it is we were busking in New York City one day, and this mime group was in our spot. So usually when that happens, we kind of trade off back and forth. And it was a group called Imagine. It was 3 people, a man and 2 women. And they told us about Giancarlo Menotti's little party in Charleston, South Carolina that they heard about, and they were going to go down because they were a classic mime group, which means, old Marceau style, this stuff, that for hours at a time. And they thought that would play very well at this festival. So we thought, let's follow them down. So we went down there also. John and I, the first place we went was called The Battery. And The Battery is where you get to look out at Fort Sumter, which is where the first shots of the American Civil War were fired. That was for Stefan, not for you guys. He's giving me a thumbs up now. So and it was great. We're in our Mariner gear, we're standing down there, we're playing Fort Sumter in the background, we're ripping it up, people are standing in line to give us money. Police car shows up. What y'all think you're doing? I said, well, we're just, performing as, old school street performing. Well, y'all not gonna do that here. Why don't you go into the town and try that, but y'all better move now. And just the way he said, now, we got the message. So we went into town and we found the Spoleto office. We went up into the Spoleto office and met the guy who was running the festival. His name was Skip also. And then we met the lawyer for the festival, who was Edmund Robinson, who became a great friend of ours. And I basically talked us into the festival. We got a permit to perform on the street. Imagine I got a permit to perform on the street. So we went to this one little square, a place called the Gourmetisserie, right across from the old slave markets. And John and I started doing our thing. And we had a juggling show also at that point. So on one side, you have this, and on the other side, you have me and Ciaglia jumping around, throwing flaming pins at each other, and playing fifes at about 200 miles an hour. So, didn't work out so well for Imagine, but it worked out very well for us. They ended up leaving. There's a bit of a story to that, but I don't have all day. So it ended up with John and I being named the official buskers of the Piccolo Spoleto Festival. And it was amazing, as I say, it's a classical music festival. And we would have people come listen to us, standing off to the side. And there was, for example, one time there was a woman there who was really paying very close attention. And John saw her, and he John had this flair he could do with his eyebrows that, bang, up they went, and so I'm like, okay, what just happened? Somebody's here. We finished playing, and this woman came over and started talking to us. And she was talking especially with John about the harmony. She said, I really like the this and the that, and well, it was really interesting how you're doing those things. And John said, okay, are you a musician? She said, no, I'm just a singer. And John looked at her, and again, lost the eyebrows went. He said, are you Maria Callas? And she said, that's me. So one of the most famous singers in the world is standing next to us, listening to us. And it's somebody who really came from John's world, so that meant so much to him. And we had, from the Los Angeles Philharmonic, basically all of them came by and stood there listening to us and talking with John about, the formation of the chords and the this and the that and the other. And so he was just in his element. I was just so happy for him. And so we would do our combination of Fife duets, and then we play some Irish music. I had the uilleann pipes with me and flutes and everything. We'd do that. And then we'd be, throwing, pins and balls and everything back and forth. It was just a great time. And I'm so sad we didn't have, pocket telephones, pocket cameras and everything back there, because John and I never got to see what it looked like. Nobody ever filmed it, so there's no history of all of this stuff except my memories of it, And before he died, the last time I saw John, last contact I had with John was at the Jaybirds Day last year when John Benoit and I were brought in along with other great musicians from Drumwood. But I was talking a lot with John that day, and he had said in emails to me that my favorite time was always going to Spoleto. My favorite time playing with you was at Spoleto. And he said that one more time at the company hall. And I said, why? He said, well, obviously it was a classical environment, and, I was kind of in my element there. He said, but it just really surprised me. He said, for me, it was a little look into what your world must be like. Because you're the one who's running around doing concerts with all these major Irish players and this and that, and appreciative audiences. He said, He said, this just must be what it's like. That's just so cool, and I'm so happy to have been able to share that with you. He said, that was just the most fun I ever had in my life, and it was the most appreciated I've felt, because I have people like, these people coming up to me and talking to me about our stuff. So it wasn't just jigs and reels for a change. I had mentioned about also how we used to play in New York. I'm going to close out with this little story here for you. We were playing on the corner. I'm sure there's some people in the room who are of an age, as we say, who may remember the Grey Poupon commercials on television. For those of you, actually, who don't know about it, Grey Poupon was this mustard, French-style Dijon mustard that the way they marketed it, it was always people in limousines stopping, and one window would roll down and the other window would come down, and one guy would say, oh, have you any Grey Poupon? Oh, of course. And they'd hand it from limousine to limousine. Okay, so this is the Grey Poupon story. John and I were playing in New York. A limousine stops in front of us. The window starts rolling down in the back of the limousine. John looks at me and says, do you have any Grey Poupon with it? And I said, no, we were expecting something to come flying out the window at us. But this gloved hand comes out and does this. So I walk over to the car, we walk over to the car, and there's an elderly woman in the car. And she says, oh, excuse me, we've been listening to you. I've noticed you several times in the past. I'm in this area often. I have a little soiree at my home this evening. Could we possibly engage you gentlemen to to come play. There'll simply be remuneration. We'll pick you up and bring you wherever you want to go at the end. Is that possible? Yeah, of course, certainly. So a little bit later, 6 o'clock or so, whatever the time was, limousine comes back. John and I get into the limousine and we are driven to New Jersey. Nice New Jersey, Farmville. And end up at this mansion. We go into the mansion. It's full of elegantly dressed people. And it turns out this is the upper crust of Broadway society. Is at this bar. All the big singers, dancers, performers, composers, arrangers, everybody is there. The grand dame, it turns out, was some, famous financier of Broadway projects and things. So John and I do our thing, we do our little show, everybody likes it, everybody's standing around talking, and we're in this one little group of people. And I don't remember exactly what led up to this, but John and I were there was a gentleman there, a couple other people, and they made a joke about, can you play so fast and juggle at the same time? And so we played the clank, we played the Clouds Reel that we used to do on one hand on the Fife with the Mariners, and juggle 2 balls. And we stopped, there was a little applause, and this one person says, oh my God, that's like rhyming orange. And I just looked and said, oh, that's easy, orange. Silence. Absolute silence. I looked over at John, he looked at me, he said, well, Pappy, you did it this time. I said, what did I do? He said, well, apparently you just did the impossible thing. You just made a rhyme for orange. Standing in front of us was Stephen Sondheim. Stephen then wrote a song rhyming orange and orange. And it was heralded as the first person to ever do that. And Ciaglia took such delight in, he actually cut the clipping out of the newspaper from the New York Times that had that story and said, see, Pappy, screwed again. So, I hope you enjoyed these couple of stories and this little. Look, John was such a huge personality, had such a huge mind. I mean, he was fascinated by anything you could never master. He knew so much about wine, he knew so much about trees. He knew so much about so many things just to know them. He was such a great influence on me. I learned so much from John, what to do, what I did not want to do, how I want to play, how I don't want to play. It was such a foundational thing for me, playing first in the trios with John Beno. We were at John's house, Ciaglia's house on Bradford Point, when he first started doing arrangements. All of the Fisher's hornpipe, all of these, Daryl's flute, Downshire, all of that stuff. That's when the 2 Johns and I were hanging out, playing our tunes and smoking our smokes and drinking our drinks and just having fun. It was a magical time. Thank you very much for this. Ben, I know I've gone over time, but it's really hard to condense a 55-year relationship. Oh, the way we met, last little thing. Back in the old day, in Deep River Muster, when there used to be at the Muster Field and a Deep River Inn in Sweet Hall, were jam sessions at night. Sweet Hall one night. I had not formally met Ciaglia. I was playing something, Kendrabeck or something really fast. I think I was, whatever. And he turns around and he looks at me and he says, excuse me, would you mind if I placed my fingers on your throat to determine if you're single or double toning that? If you could play that again at that speed, please. That's all I got, Ciaglia. I'm sure you all have lots of memories. I look forward to hearing some of your stories when I am able to come over again. I'm hoping to come back over for Deep River or Westbrook next year. Enjoy yourself, enjoy your lives, enjoy your friends. And they're always alive as long as we remember. Take care, everybody. Cheers.
And now, Mr. Joe Mooney, could you come up and bring Stony Creek with you?
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Joe Mooney. My remarks will be brief. I really can't remember exactly how it happened, but John, back in the day, it was Ciaglia, is how we pronounce his name, and we were corrected along the way. It was John Ciaglia. But John, Jimmy Neely, Craig Stopka, and Dave Mauser all came down to Stony Creek back in the probably late 60s, around 1965 or so. And Louis Lavassa probably recruited him out of the Branford High School band. John was very talented back in the day and a handsome man. And he went to school with my sister, and I can remember him. His dad had a tackle and bait shop down in Branford Point, and John used to drive. There was a 1967 Chrysler Town and Country, which you kind of probably can't imagine him driving one of those, but back in the day, that's what he would drive around. And there's times where he'd be down at Branford Point, he'd be juggling, he'd be teaching people how to juggle and how to play the fife, and he'd be chasing the women and having a grand old time. Back then, I was a youngster. I was 3 years younger than John, and he would also, back then it was Craig and myself and Dave Hooker. We were the early teachers for the Totoket Ancients. So again, back in the 60s, John didn't stay with us long. He moved on probably in the early 70s. But when he started, and some of these notes came from Jack Doyle, who you may know. He started playing with Stony Creek, and we were using metal fifes back then, and the Calcavecchi fife. And John was the first one to come in with a wooden fife, and he had an Ed Ferrari fife. Jackie Doyle also said he brought down the Roy Seaman McDonough model down to Seaside Hall back in the 70s, and actually, a lot of the core members were playing that after John left. One of the times that I really remember John was, there's times where he was a complicated person, and but most of it was around his musical desires and talents and everything. And there was a meeting down at the Stony Creek Hall, and the elders were there, and he basically got up and said, "You're terrible. You guys are resting on your laurels, and you really need to get your act together." So obviously that was John, because he said what was on his mind. And it didn't go over that well, but surprisingly, right? But the thing is that after that, we, back then the fifers, and I'm a bass drummer, and I think I learned one or two songs and rudiments down there, and then I was left on my own for many years. But back then we were on X's and O's for the fife. And John and Jimmy Neely and others, started to introduce the music. And there was a lot of resistance, but there's also a lot of people that picked it up. And so, in the things that John would say and inspire us really moved us to a different place. And after John moved on, we started competition in the early 70s, and it really was to improve ourselves, to really be self-critical and such. So, really tribute to him, because we wouldn't be as good as we are. And again, we're an ancient, big sound core, and some of the people read music, some don't, but we all play together and we have a great time. But John was the catalyst, and so as I mentioned, he outgrew us. We kept in touch, and he always kept an eye on us and would comment and say, you guys are really doing well, and you could do this and that. And he also inspired a lot of our fifers and other musicians. So anyhow, thank you, John, and may he rest in peace. I think with that, the creek is going to come up. We're going to play a couple songs, and then just carry on from there. Call them the Canaries back then. That was John and John and Jimmy and Craig Stopka and Dave Mauser. Yeah.
You did a company, you can do it here. Eel pie. City Guard. Wild Mountain Pond. Ensemble. DJ, that's all.
Okay, next up we have Mr. Alan Reed.
First, I bring sad news that Jim Neely couldn't make it today, but he did send his regards and wishes that he was here to see all of his dear friends and those who grew up with Ciaglia as well. I also have a message from Peggy. What's Peggy's last name? Anyway, she and John Ciaglia wrote an obituary some time ago, last year, I believe, and I'm going to read that out to you. But I'm going to kind of bridge the gap a little bit between where Ciaglia's life left off with Fife in the Fast Lane and today's modern cooperation with Greg Bacon. And the biggest part of that happens to be this representation of the Casbah here, which I'm sure most of you who knew what that's all about. Nancy Pierce and a few others, John and myself, decided that sitting around a candelabra in the middle of the muster field just wasn't going to be big enough. So Pierce and I got into a competition to see who could bring the fanciest decorations next time, set up the canopy tents and all this. It became a kind of a spot where people could get together and discuss things that were sort of non-denominational. And Scott Mitchell pointed this out to me years ago now, saying that this area, the Casbah, was not affiliated with a specific corps. It didn't have the traditions of you have to know somebody in this corps before you can go to their tent. Anybody and everybody could gather in. And it ended up being the perfect venue for Ciaglia to hold court and to answer questions, and most important, for young people to learn that he wasn't going to bite you. He was such an imposing figure, everybody absolutely revered him. Oh, Ciaglia, walking on the field. But to have the Casbah set up so that he could sit around, talk to the young people, those young people would mature and bring more young people over to meet him and talk to him and just have, it was a great place for convivial discussion of all sorts. Part of what we did a lot of in the early years of the Casbah, which started in 2006, so you can do the math for that, it's 18 years, something like that. Part of it was we would get together and play flute ensemble music on the Fife, which for a lot of us, including Ciaglia, this ties in with his classical upbringing and his desires for classical music. And we would just sit down and play duets if there were 2 people, and trios if there were 3 people, or 6, or 12, or quintets if we had 15 or 20 people gathered around the Casbah. There's a picture that's floated around Fife and Drum Friends' Facebook page with a green canopy tent shining green light onto about 12 or 15, maybe 15-year-olds, maybe 12-year-olds. I think Jay Healy was involved in that, and a number of people in this room. But that was the kind of thing that Ciaglia just loved. Later on in years, some of those guys would get together, bring a music stand and a book over, and play for Ciaglia as he sat in the Casbah. It literally became the place for Ciaglia to become and interact with the wider Fife and Drum community. He didn't affiliate with the corps. He did occasionally wander around. He'd go to the jam session or not, but everybody knew you could probably find Ciaglia sitting under the Casbah. So that's where, and for the past several years, Ciaglia said to me, I wouldn't be going if you weren't building this to set it, because it was comfortable, and he had had lots of pain at that point, or he was not feeling like very strong. So it was nice to have a nice shady spot, coolers of drinks around, being fed, that kind of thing. So, but that's the tie-in. I had met Ciaglia right after I joined the Old Guard in 1975. I got out just about the time Mumford was getting, or I got in about the time Mumford was getting out. So the torch had to be passed to someone. But Mark Bossy was my instructor, and Mark introduced me to Ciaglia way back when, and that was around exactly the time that John had started writing all of these strange arrangements. He wrote the Street People songs, he wrote the harmonies to Downshire and Devil's Flute around that era. So he got a chance to hear us perform or to play out some of the charts that he had written and not really heard. He didn't have the benefit of electronic playback that we have today. So, but that was Ciaglia, and that was 45 years ago or 48 years ago, and I see a lot of familiar faces around this room. Now, Peggy Fraser Ballantyne was Ciaglia's dear friend from long ago, and I'm going to read what she has sent to me concerning this. Like I say, she and Ciaglia had gotten together, I want to say a year and a half ago, and wrote this because, well, let me read it to her. Peggy writes, "The following was written by my friend, I hope, Peg Fraser Ballantyne, a fifer formerly with Monotony Minutemen of Arlington, Massachusetts. She currently lives in Minnesota and is sad not to be able to be here, but feels fortunate to have been able to visit John a bunch of times in the past couple of years." She says this: "John Ciaglia was a dear, dear friend of mine who I met ages and ages ago in the Sudbury muster. It was a chance meeting. I knew nothing of his history or his musical skills. I saw him as a fun, interesting person, and we instantly became friends. On that first night of our meeting, we stayed up until sunrise, talking and talking by the light of the campfire in the shadow of the Wayside Inn." Everybody here knows that place, too. "The conversation continued for many of the next 40 years at musters and via mailed letters, phone calls, internet, and texts. For the last few years, we spoke or texted daily. A few years back, when he was slowing down, I suggested that we write down a bit of his history to be shared after his passing." I somehow just have a hard time seeing Ciaglia saying, "Oh yeah, let's write about that." He told me that no one would care, and that's the point of it. No one would care about any of it, but I insisted that he was wrong. He was so self-effacing. He did not, I don't know if he said it to himself inwardly or what, but he never thought of himself as a giant in the fife and drum world. And all he had to do was open his eyes. But he told me that no one would care about any of it, but I insisted he was wrong. So many people knew or knew of Ciaglia, but parts of his life were a mystery, and I'd like to share a bit of that. So here goes. John Ciaglia was born in New Haven on April 3rd, 1951. One of 3 children. He spent most of his life in, this says Branson, but I think that was auto-corrected from Branford, Connecticut. He grew up playing the fife and was a member of the Stony Creek Fife and Drum Corps. At the age of 18, he won the Northeastern State Championship. In 1969, he joined the Ancient Mariners. John attended Wagner College in Staten Island, where he studied music. He continued his studies at Lindenwood University at St. Charles, Missouri, and at Yale. In 1974, John wrote his first arrangement for fife. He then went on to write well over 1,000 more. Much of his work has been published or recorded, some hasn't. A couple years back, when I was at his house looking for something for him, I came upon a pile of his unpublished arrangements, just strewn into a drawer and forgotten. Yeah, his filing system.
We got all that, by the way.
That's awesome. Yeah. Up until the last couple of months, he was still writing, which gave him immense satisfaction. I can vouch for that as well. It was the working with Greg Bacon for these last couple of years really was like an elixir to prolong his life. It gave him a purpose in life, and even though, again, he would not admit it as much, it really did him well to do that. He considered his music to be his legacy. Professionally, John was a great teacher of fife and over the years taught countless corps and individuals. In addition, he served as a sales representative for Slocum & Sons and later Coastal Wine and Spirits. He loved helping customers, and his knowledge of wine was nothing short of astounding. Scotch, wine, grappa, and all of the above, every bit of it. It wasn't unusual to see a line of people waiting to speak to him about wine. I witnessed this myself. This line included many noted food and wine celebrities whom he knew personally. John traveled extensively for work and pleasure. Once a year, he would visit wineries in Europe. Other trips found him busking on street corners all over the world, as Skip mentioned. 1,000,000 years ago, he invited me to busk on those same corners with him. Sadly, I was unable to, and have always regretted missing out on what was sure to have been an epic adventure. One of John's very favorite repeat trips was to Fastnacht. He loved every single aspect of that festival. John had many passions which he voraciously threw himself into. In addition to wine, women, and song, yeah, he loved his women, that's for sure, and song. His interests included juggling, yoga, botany, running, reading. His home was a reflection of all these varied interests. Juggling clubs piled in the guest room, trees and plants covering every surface, sneakers and yoga mats by the door, a wall of books, an enormous crate of garlic in the hallway, his studio equipment in the main room, and on the mantle, a giant silver ice bucket full of fifes, including his fishpole-wrapped original McDonough fife, varnished and all of that, but when his fife cracked, he took it to his father's shop or some other place to do this and just wrapped different colored thread around his fife, and it was so distinctive because of that. In fact, isn't that it on the picture he's on the board there? He loved the news, cooking shows, and would listen to classical pieces hundreds of times, picking up on subtle nuances. I know he was a huge fan of Lang Lang and of Yusha Wang on the piano. He would show me play hours of these performances. Unbelievable. He had virtually no interest in contemporary entertainment and was unfamiliar with most popular music, television shows, or movies. In fact, he only remembered seeing one movie in the last few decades when he was dragged there by a friend. John was a self-proclaimed hermit and quite shy. However, he loved to converse with others who shared his passions. His vocabulary was unbelievably extensive. If he came upon an unfamiliar word, he would learn it, remember it, and use it. I studied literature in college, and yet I was forever saying, "Ciaglia, what the hell does that word mean?" Or, "I think I remember that word from the SATs." His sophisticated language was tempered by self-deprecation and, depending on the company, occasionally salty adjectives. John lived a very full, passionate life, a life completely on his own terms. He was a unique, gifted, and irreplaceable treasure. His passing leaves an enormous hole in the fife and drum community and in my heart and our hearts. Although he may have left us, his spirit lives in his music, which will live on forever. Thank you, guys.
I'm Brian Watkinson. Howdy, howdy.
We're going to start with a full group piece. In 2004, when John Beno and I started Grand Republic, there wasn't a lot of room for other arrangers. And then we came across this little medley, and we both agreed it was screaming for the Ciaglia treatment. We like to think of it like the Michael Caine medley. It's just very cinematic, and I'm really glad that Ciaglia could contribute to the history of our group. And after that, we'll play some other things.
Dragon's Light?
So I'm going to join the Great Grand Republic Fifers on a piece composed by John Benoit for Basil Fashnacht, and it's a great arrangement done by Ciaglia. So. Okay, Mr. Clark. Now we're going to play a few pieces from the Fife and the Fast Lane project, with Jim Clark playing drum, and Sarah McCunniff and Jane Law on fifes, and myself.
These are three pieces from the Fife and the Fast Lane excuse me, recording project. I think I will tell you one important story that shows a different side about John when we're through playing, but I think we'll get through these pieces first. I was teaching John Benoit's children beginning piano things, and I had been teaching with John Ciaglia for several years, from time to time, teaching chorus. And they told me they were doing this Fife and the Fast Lane business, and they wanted to make a recording. They wanted me to add some drum parts to a few pieces. It was very exciting, and if you're a drummer, my main interest in rudimental drumming is ensemble playing with fifers, and the thrill of playing with Ciaglia and Benoit was really extraordinary, because not only are they such beautiful people and complex and interesting people, but they played so really, really beautifully. And they didn't want to record with me. They didn't want to play in the same room. The idea was that we would record perfect. I'm just telling you the story, John. It's true. They would record perfect 5 tracks, and then at some later date, I would go in and add drumming to it and not disturb anything. And that wasn't my idea of fun. And so what we ended up doing was they did this very, very nicely. They would come up to my house a few times, and we would play through a couple of the pieces in my living room. And we would play a piece, come in and they'd be friendly and nice and so forth. We'd play a piece once, and it'd be silence. And I said, let's do that again. They'd say, no. We'd play it again, say, all right, you gotta go. And that would be it. But at least I got to play live with them in my living room. We did very few live performances after that. But that was my reward for doing, writing the parts and doing the recording, because it was really special. John Benoit's playing was so perfectly focused and perfectly precise and perfectly detailed, and you could play along with it. The ensemble was so easy to do if you were doing everything right. And it was so musical at the same time. It was so artfully cut, It was just this little gem of perfection. And Ciaglia's playing, to me, was always much bigger and broader and rounder and floated around a lot more. And that was very beautiful to me, too. I love to listen to John Ciaglia play. When we used to teach together, I would often ask him after a rehearsal to just play something for me. I'd make up questions that I had to have him demonstrate something. It was so beautiful just to hear him play. And the same is true of Benoit. So it was a great honor for me to do this. And I haven't played much of this music since. So about a week ago they called me, and I've been trying desperately to recall the parts and to make sense out of them and to do this. So wish us all good luck, because they know what they're doing. This first piece is called Here's to the Maid of Bashful 15. I first learned it from one of those George Carroll books that came out in the 1960s. It's a very simple, I think it's an 18th century tune. It sounds like an 18th century tune. And the whole Fife in the Fast Lane idea, it seemed to me when they asked me to contribute my little bit to it, it was the idea of chamber music for fifes and drums. The big problem with chorus, as Sarah knows from the years I worked with MCV, the problem is not having the drum section obscure what the fifes are doing when the fifes are playing multiple parts. And you struggle with that all the time. So what we were trying to do with Fife in the Fast Lane was to have the parts be sparse enough and to balance the thing so that you could actually combine fifes and drums without covering up all Ciaglia's favorite stuff. Well, we'll see what happens here. 8 bars. There you go. One of the few melodies that John wrote that he was happy enough with to let out in public. When you're writing, you know, as we all know, John loved studying technical things, all sorts of technical things. And when you're writing counterpoint, there are not exactly rules that you have to follow, or otherwise every piece would sound the same. But there are a lot of conventional things to do, conventional voice leadings, conventional progressions that you can put in, and then at least you're not doing anything wrong. And it's safe in a way. I mean, you can do it, and you haven't done anything wrong, and then you can experiment within the range. But when you're writing a melody, there is no rule for writing a melody. A great melody sings to you or it doesn't. And you can't have any kind of rule that will guarantee that you'll come up with a good melody. You can write an arrangement and say, look at that, I've got all the harmony is all there and it all is justifiable, I can defend it. You write a melody, it works, it doesn't work. And John was, in my experience with him, was a little reluctant about putting out a lot of his melodies, but he had a wonderful gift for it. And this one, called Mishna Orion's, is a really great melody, and I think everybody who's heard it, so far as I know, likes it. And I would love it to become a standard kind of tune for people to play. I think it's a really great piece. So, Mishna Orion's. Thank you. 2, 3, go. that, go home and learn it. That would be a nice tribute for John. I think this is so wonderful to hear so much of his music played and to see people gathered here to hear his music. Because he was really serious about it in a really beautiful and loving way. A very, very dedicated musician. And so many times when we would talk, I don't know him as well as many of the other people do. I know him intensely. But only one-to-one. I'm better. If you know me, I'm better at one-to-one than in any kind of group. And all we shared was our interest in music. But boy, was he sincere about that. We had a lot of good conversations about music. And he just loved it. And he would have loved the idea of people coming, actually giving you good hearing in these things. So I'm really grateful that people are able to listen. And I hope you listen to a lot more of this music. The last piece we're going to play is, I requested you to add it to the program because I like it so much. It's Murphy's Hornpipe. Also, a memorable tune that has gotten a lot of popularity. And I don't, anybody write that? Oh, Benoit wrote that. This is John Benoit's melody. John's written a lot more tunes. John is braver about putting them out in public, and he has every right to be. And this is one of, I think, one of my favorite tunes of John's. And we did it for the Fife Fast Lane project. And I played it many times with Skip. When I thought Skip was coming, I was practicing a lot because we usually do it about 116 beats a minute.
Let's not do that.
Because it wasn't even on the program a couple of days
Maybe
ago.
110.
And there's about a lot of nuance that gets lost when you do that. So we're doing it to show the arrangement of it more, which you can do, I think, nicely in a slower tempo. So we're going to try to play Murphy's. One, two, three.
Okay, we're going to bring some food up for lunch, and everybody take a break. Yeah, absolutely.
I want to tell, I do want to tell one John Ciaglia story. I know that I'm not going to go on and on, but I will, as John knows, I will go on. It's very embarrassing. If this wasn't important, I wouldn't do it, because I am embarrassed. I know people make fun of me all the time. But I'm going to do this anyway, because it's important to me. I taught chorus with John for a few years in the late 70s, early 80s. And we were struggling along, you know. I hear a lot in later years, when I started to teach MCV especially, there was all this sort of John Ciaglia voodoo. You can only call him by his last name. He's this magical, you know, hermity genius, all that kind of stuff. But when we were young, we were just guys trying to make a living and trying to pursue the music that we loved. And we were both children of the 1960s. And in the 1960s, there was a lot of credit given to people trying to do creative things and artistic things, and that was considered a really worthwhile thing to do. Looking at things as a way just to make money, it wasn't looked up so so grandly at that point. You know, you're doing something, it's creative, you love it. Oh, good, that's a good reason to do it. And so John and I were, you know, from that world. And we were teaching junior chorus, and ancient drum corps was a lot bigger than it is now. The Deep River Muster would be going on, chorus would still be going on stand at dark on the third Saturday in July. There were chorus everywhere, most every town around here, just coming down the river, every single town I can name the corps that was there at that point. And so, one of the ways that John and I were making livings was to teach these corps, and that seemed like a big thing to do. There were these great people in the generation before us, you know, McDonough and McElhaney and Jimmy Douglas on the fife, and all the great drummers who I admired so much. And it seemed like that we were part of this big movement. So we were teaching chorus together, and it wasn't working out quite that way. Things were different. And John and I had very exalted artistic standards and things we wanted to produce, we wanted to teach people. And, you know, junior corps, nice parents who aren't musicians want their kids to play Yankee Doodle and get through a Memorial Day parade. It's not the same thing. So we were teaching the Deep River Juniors, and we were both running out of money, which was typical for us at that point. This is before Ciaglia was all in the wine business and all that stuff. And he was busking and he was teaching chorus, and I was doing sort of the percussive equivalent of those things. And we were talking, we used to talk for a couple of hours after rehearsal every week. Everything I know about the fife, except for a few things I picked up later from John Beno, everything else I learned from Ciaglia, standing around after rehearsal asking him questions, or just letting him go. It was great. And so we were both in trouble, and Ciaglia said to me, "There's another side of John that I think I wanted you to hear about." So John's in his late 20s or something like that, and he said to me, "Don't worry about it. I've got this under control. We're going to talk to the management, and we're going to get a big raise because we deserve it." And this wasn't arrogance. This was real life. And I said, "Oh, John, you know, it's a drum corps. They don't want to pay us anything." And he said, "No, I grew up around here. I know these people. This is going to work." And he really, you know, he had worked so hard. He was such a good musician. I loved listening to him talk about music, and we discussed classical music all the time. And I loved to hear him play, and he really knew what he was teaching. He was really trying to teach those beginning fifers at a very high level. And he said, "This is worth something." So the next week, we had a meeting with the management of the drum corps. And we're sitting in this little room at that elementary school where the parade in Deep River used to start many years ago. And Ciaglia let go and told them what he thought. He said, we are real musicians. We are teaching your children. It's not just teaching them to play Yankee Doodle to get through a parade. We're teaching them about intonation. We're teaching them about phrasing. I'm teaching them about proper breath control. James here, he always called me James. James here has studied classical percussion. He can teach them nuances of touch and phrasing, polyrhythmic possibilities that are, you know, beyond just playing a few rudiments and playing halftime. And your children are getting a kind of musical education that they wouldn't be getting if we hadn't studied so hard. And to study so hard takes time, and we have to get paid so that we can continue doing it. I hope this makes a tiny bit of sense to you. It's very important in my life, and it was important in Ciaglia's. So we got through, Ciaglia got through this. I didn't say a word. And we got through that, and they looked around. It was quite silent in the room, and somebody mumbled something, and we got out of there. And the next week, we got a $5 a week raise, which was not enough to do us any good. And Ciaglia and I kept talking after that, and I said, "John, you know, every week we would talk for a couple hours. Middle of the winter, didn't matter. We would talk till 11 or 11:30 every Tuesday night." And I said, "John, why don't you go to graduate school and get a doctoral degree in theory of composition? And then you can do the kind of work that you like to do, and there's credit for it in that world. You know, there's a job for you, and you can do something with it." And he said, "No, I don't want to. I am the world's greatest fifer," or words to that effect. "And I write for the fife, and this is my work and what I do. I don't want to go and be one of those guys getting through my graduate theory classes." And the point of that story is that then that's what he did. He kept doing that, and shortly after that, he ended up getting involved with all the other things that he did, the wine business and all that stuff. And he stuck with that, and that's what he wanted to do, and he did it for a long time. And it wasn't so easy. You know, by the time I was teaching MCV, there was all this, you know, Ciaglia mystique and certain, you know, there's a whole kind of aura around him and stuff. And that's nice, you know, to have a little aura around you. I don't know, I never liked that part of John's persona. But, you know, I could see that was something. But he didn't need that. He was really, really pure. And when nobody was going to pay him to teach, and nobody really wanted his arrangements, and he was just the crazy guy at the muster field who played faster than everybody else, he kept doing it because he loved it. And he really, really, really loved it and pursued it. And that's a really worthwhile thing for an artist to do. And John was a real artist. He really loved his art. And I always loved it when I got a chance to talk to him and see that in him. And we had a nice relationship because he respected me. I was very glad he did. And I respected the heck out of him. He was a beautiful, beautiful guy. And now you can all laugh at me for telling a story too long, but I'm glad I did. Thank you very much.
The best time.
Okay, everybody, please, hope you're enjoying your lunch. And while we finish up, we're honored to have members from the United States, the Old Guard Fife and Drum Corps, play a selection of music today. And Emily, thank you so much for all your help, and Kara, and thank you everybody for making the drive up here and for doing so much extraordinary preparation to this event. So we look forward to hearing you. Thank you.
I'm not going to use the mic. Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Yes. Okay. So my name is Kara. I've been playing the fife for about 20 years now, and well, over 20 years now. And my first experience with John Ciaglia was when I received a copy of the Fifes in the Fast Lane little duo book with the Patty on the Handcart and Sailor's Hornpipe in it. And I got that, and I didn't know how to play it, but I listened to it. And then when I went to Deep River Mustard the next year, I was like, I've heard all about this John Ciaglia and this John Benoit guys. Like, where can I want to meet them? I want them to sign my little handbook. And they're like, oh yeah, go, they're over there somewhere. And so I went over and I told John I was going to throw him under the bus. I was like, my name's Kara, will you sign this book for me? And he was like, get lost, kid! And so, unfazed, actually Corinne, you were there with me when that happened. And so we were unfazed and went over to sign to ask John Ciaglia to sign it, and he was like, of course I'll sign this for you, and here's some more music that I've written, and you can have fun with this. But I feel like, I don't know either one of you that well, but from what I've heard, that kind of encapsulates maybe a little bit of fife and drum. But we're going to start off with the Peter Street medley from Road to Folly.
Hello, everyone. My name's Kevin. Hi, Kevin. I'd just like to say thank you to the organizers for having us come up and play. It's really an honor and important for me as a drummer to be here and playing for this concert, so I can't imagine what it means to the fifers, friends, and our fighters of John Ciaglia. So on behalf of us, thank you for having us. The next thing we're going to play, if you're familiar with the Fife Alive album, you'll know the tune Castle Carry, as played in that album, drum arrangement by Mr. Scott Mitchell. If you read the notes for that album, you'll know that the traditional tune that John and Skip, I think they said they like to play it on melancholy days because of just the way the melody kind of sat. So this is an arrangement of that traditional tune called Castle Carry. I hope you enjoy. Hello, my name is Chris. So, the next piece we got is Little Rita, seemingly one of Ciaglia's lesser played works. I've been in the Corps for about a year, so I've been involved in fife and drum period for about a year. And so, this piece, as well as Peter Street, as well as everything I hear from him, shows me how much of an artist he was. I never got the chance to meet John Ciaglia, unfortunately, but it's really awesome for me to be here and hear about him and hear a bunch of his music. And it does speak to me again, as I came from a classical music background as well. It speaks to me a lot. This next piece, it's got a lot of cool rhythms and harmonies. He takes one particular melody and puts it into 5 parts and does different dance movements with it. Slip jig, a reel, hornpipe, inverted hornpipe, all his usual Ciaglia-y stuff, right? It's pretty cool. Hope you enjoy.
Ciaglia.
Oh my God, I have to.
Hi, Jay.
For those that don't know me, my
Hi,
name
Jay.
is...
Dave's not here.
For those of you that don't know me, my name is Jay. I've been playing Fife for 16 years, which is a while for me. But Ciaglia had a massive influence on my life ever since I was a little kid. I remember going to the Casbah many times during Westbrook and Deep River, and just sitting there and reading through charts that Greg Bacon and John Ciaglia put together. And one of my favorite memories is actually from a photo that's up there, is a bunch of us from what we consider the next generation of fifers and drummers got together, read through his charts, and I remember him sitting there looking at us and going, And for me, just getting a from Ciaglia was one of the biggest compliments I think I could have. So when I heard the passing of Ciaglia, it deeply affected me. And like many of us in the community, music is our way of expressing who we are and really connecting to each other. So one way that I had to cope with the emotion was sitting down and actually arranging something, connecting me to Ciaglia in the way that he would write things and using some of his same counterpoint and same melodic movements throughout different lines. And that was one of the ways that I felt like I could connect in some ways, but I know I could never do justice to what he has done for the community and what he has written. So this is just only my little tribute to him, and I hope you all enjoy this tune, Westering Home.
The last piece we're going to play for you.
Who are you?
My name is Emily.
Hi, Emily.
And before we close our program, I just want to highlight our bass drummer as well, Nathan. We didn't introduce him.
Hi, Nathan.
Hi, Nathan. So the last piece on the program is very special to us. This is a piece that the group who is also very close to us, the Old Guard Choir, who we happen to admire, they commissioned this piece from Greg Bacon and John Ciaglia. So it's called Cedar and Birch. I hope you may have heard it before, because we love to play it. It's really special to us, but if you are unfamiliar, basically, Mr. Bacon, who we are so thankful that he collaborated on this project, composed every melody that you hear in this piece from scratch. So I would love to share the full program notes, which please come up to me afterwards and I can send you his lengthy description of every single tune with a different tree name and what it symbolizes and all of the meaning behind the trees that surround the tidal basin down in DC. But basically, this piece came out of kind of struggling to be together after the pandemic. We were collaborating in 2021 about the piece, and the theme of the piece is really togetherness and hope, basically. The founding tree names, cedar and birch, they correspond to being hopeful kind of symbolism, basically. So we were very, very honored that John got to hear this piece. I was actually looking on my phone just before we got up here at the last correspondence that we had about this piece, because we did share the video that we made with him. And we were so honored that he appreciated it. You know, me and my, desire to always get better, I said, I know there's so much we can work on, and he acknowledged that, because he said, we always have stuff to work on, but please be happy with what you have, and it is really nice. And so we're very honored that he got to see it and to hear it. So we will close with this piece, Cedar and Birch, in memory of John Ciaglia.
Well, thanks everybody. I hope everybody enjoyed the fantastic lunch. Just awesome. We can all come together in remembrance and to share a meal together as well. Imitation is by far and away the greatest form of flattery. I made this comment several months ago when I first heard of John's passing. And if those of you who aren't in my immediate gravitational pull of friends never saw that post, I wanted to just share a little bit of it again. Up until February of 1984, I didn't know what a fife was. I thought it was something that they played on the Bugs Bunny show on Saturday morning. I had no idea. I should turn in my Rhode Island accent because of that. But I had no idea. And then I heard the old guard at a St. Patrick's Day performance down in Savannah, Georgia, and I was transfixed. It changed everything for me. And through a crazy couple of happenstances and good fortune, I was able to transfer out of the unit that I was with, and I was accepted into the fife line of the old guard, Fife and Drum Corps. I think sometimes musically we all have these aha moments. First time we figure out how to breathe properly. For fifers, that orifice to edge relationship that makes the sound of your tonality so much clearer. For me, it was hearing this Fife and Drum Corps, one of many, I should say. And I heard them play, and it just changed everything. I started learning a new instrument, and that was awesome. A few years later, I got out, came back into civilian life, but before I did, I was also introduced to my first Fife and Drum Corps muster. And Alan Reed and Dave Knoll and Scott Redfield, if he were here this afternoon, would tell you they dragged me up to Westbrook kicking and screaming. I just kind of had my fill of Army a little bit at that point, in that moment, but I went up to Westbrook and immediately just fell in love, as they knew that I would, with the whole scene. And one of the things that I was exposed to with this lovely little instrument that we used to play Yankee Doodle and Road to Boston was John Ciaglia and John Beno as Fife in the Fast Lane. And it absolutely, to this day, it absolutely blew my mind. I've played classical music on the flute. I've been exposed to jazz. I was a student at the Berklee College of Music right out of high school. I've got a little bit of a background. I can hold my own in a conversation. But I heard these two playing, and I was absolutely transfixed. After I left the service in 1986, my friends Alan Reed and Scott got together, and we went on stand and did a little show, and the announcer wanted to know what we should be called. And I said, I don't know, why don't you call us Fifes in the Breakdown Lane? Imitation is by far and away the best form of flattery. So we did this, and over the years, in those early, the mid to late 80s, it became something of a little bit of a fixture every now and again. And that trio morphed over time. It certainly included Tishka Muskow, Bill Hart, several other musicians as well. I wrote a book. Some people like it. Some people were inspired by it. And I'm happy that I was able to do it. And I was able to do it because of this moment, this sort of pivotal moment in my life, when I was so completely destroyed and inspired by two guys at a muster dressed up in black turtleneck shirts and little berets playing Sergei Prokofiev on the fife. And I mean to tell you, if that wasn't the biggest aha moment in my life, I don't know what it is. It defined who I would become even 40 years later as a musician, as a fifer, and as a teacher of music to young people. You don't have to look very far at all this afternoon to hear the evidence of that kind of collaborative playing between the beautiful music we just heard with the old guard members in that fife line, the Creek, the Grand Republic, and MCV soon to come up here as soon as I stop talking, and the Ancient Mariners as well. The level and the quality of music has just soared. And I want to believe that so much of that has everything to do with the influence that these two gentlemen imparted to us all those years ago, and that we can then take in our own ways and pay it forward to the younger kids who are just chomping at the bit and producing some wonderful music of theirs as well. So, John Ciaglia, God bless you and thank you. John Beno, I love you like you were a brother. Thank you.
Good afternoon. My name is John Nichols. I'm the director and drum major.
Hi, John.
Hi, Volunteers. Hello. This is like a weird thing now, right? Thanks, Jay. Thank you. So I'm honored to be here with all of you this afternoon to celebrate the memory of our dear friend John Ciaglia. There's only one thing, well, two, but really one thing that man loved more than good wine and good food. We all know it was good music. And we're going to attempt to highlight this by picking arrangements that he collaborated with MCV and other like-minded folks throughout our hobby. And it's hard. Where do you start? He has such a huge impact on our entire genre of music and has written for over 30 years of our 40-year existence in MCV. Right? Like, where do you start to pick? And so the answer for us is we're going to start with Red House. Originally from the banks of Allen Water, colloquially known as the Green Album, this album and tune specifically has certainly influenced large swaths of current and past members of MCV and was even the song that first intrigued PJ.
30 years ago.
100% true.
Mandala from the Bacon-Ciaglia collaboration book, Rose of the Winds, was one of the few tunes that Ciaglia ever mentioned liking out of his entire catalog of works. He loved to write and collaborate with like-minded musicians, and I had the privilege of really getting to know Ciaglia, and he was always so proud of his work with Greg.
Jane, you're taking up a lot of space. It's a Ciaglia chart.
You don't have to walk down the music stands, is it really?
John had a way of writing that could really tell stories through his tone painting. We wanted to choose a piece to highlight this remarkable talent and thought of Horses to America. It evokes the American West. Spaghetti westerns focused on melody strength, with the harmony being open and quite a bit lower than the melody for deep contrast. Ironically, most spaghetti westerns also included a soundtrack composed by an Italian dude.
And spaghetti.
Right out the sketch where you can see me.
All right. 15th Massachusetts Quickstep is certainly a longtime favorite and exceptionally recognized as MCV flavor. John Ciaglia's arrangements, contributions, and even at times participation with MCV has had a profound impact on that sound that we love as MCV and what has become our roots as well as our iconic sound. Road is a traditional maritime reel set.
Yeah.
It is wonderfully straightforward, but in all the Ciaglia wrote with a little twist that always makes it enjoyable to not only hear, but to play. Picking tunes for such a tribute is hard when the man had such a large impact on our niche hobby, but Three for the Road is such a classic John piece. tappet hen. What a special thing to be able to pick up again. Again, it's another rolling set of reels, but to not be outdone becomes reimagined into a bluesy ragtime tune with Old Joe. With Ciaglia's writing, do not ever get too comfortable, as there's always these little nuggets to keep you on your toes. It's what we love and hate about him at the same time. There was always a little more that always brought a chuckle or a smile to your face. And for all of you to coming out and celebrating such a wonderful man the best way that we could, by playing some killer tunes that he would want us to continue to play as they are in fact his legacy. Ciaglia music. And one of the interesting things that we haven't talked about a little bit today is how, you know, Ciaglia would say it's an archaic instrument. What we're doing is an anachronism. And yet, over all the years, you know, those drinking conversations that happened at the Casbah, he said, you know, I'm never going to be the technician that John Beno was. And I'm never going to go out and I'm going to reinvent myself every night to be the performer that Skip is. And so I know that what I'm going to leave behind is I'm going to leave behind as a composer. And that's what we're all here. We've all got a different take on it. We're all doing our thing. It's absolutely amazing, and we appreciate it. And also, the different instruments that we're all playing up here tonight, he also spent years trying to develop different fifes to deal with all of the different things that came up over the years. So it's
fascinating to be able to hear and see all of that. And we had somebody playing a keyed modern flute on the end, right? And PJ's going to play one of the big fife. And so it's all fascinating stuff. So, thank you.
So we're organizing our performance sort of chronologically. Yes. Some of the old early 80s style, a lot of chromatic stuff in 14th Street, then moving on to sort of his mid-period and mid-90s when he arranged the Mariner Canon, great big red book. That has most of the Mariner medleys. We're going to first play 14th Street, then Lovely Nancy, a set that I believe he arranged for Deep River Juniors. Long time ago, is that right, Matt? Yeah, but it's pretty great. And then after that, Bonham Richard, and then a piece written by Greg, arranged by Ciaglia, called The Last Grand Chorus, which is the piece from his, I think, the first collaboration book with Greg. Yeah, and it was the title of the book, and it's the last piece in the book, and there are words to it if you have the book, and if not, we can get you a copy of the words. And, anyway, and then we'll have all the Mariners. And then after that, a piece from the last book that he did with Greg called Sides of Iron, which is another 4-part fife arrangement. Pretty involved, and we had a blast learning this year. And I hope you enjoy it. And then afterwards, we're going to have all the Mariners come up and play our favorite set, the Whipple and Gasper. So, thank you.
Got a long day.
Really? That's okay. You've done it glasses. It's mostly in my head. You did it though, so it's fine. I don't see what else we do.
We're doing sides? Yes, we are. Dynamics, play France.
Who's in? You're on first, right?
Good? Yep. here. Get your whatever up here.
Sizable
Hey, Mark. I was going to say oversized horse, but.
Now you gotta move.
You're in uniform. So? Well, I am cuter.
Well, that's been for a long time.
You better. You better. You're done. Oh, wait. What's he doing?
Yep. Good to go?
Yep.
Hey, you guys are good. Wow.
We even know what we're playing right now.
That's good.
Devils and O'Connors? Oh boy.
I'm playing the less parts part.
Yeah.
Yes. I want to say how I used to think. So will you please let me know as soon as you go? So that I know what's going on. If you don't mind.
Yeah, we're starting to get. That's why it's good.
Yeah, just to get your mind on it. Sometimes you have to just like, so you can obsess. As I never used to do, and all of a sudden I'm very familiar with it.
Downfall.